Hi, hello. Welcome to Cardinal Territory. You are watching this on Friday, April 25th, which means we are about to start a short but sweet 3-game homestand with the Milwaukee Brewers. So I thought, why not ask my friend Dom Cotroneo, who does pre and post game for the Brewers on WTJ, to come join the show. No one else I'd rather talk ball with, especially some Brewers Cardinals. Dom, how are you?
Hey, what's up, Katie? Happy to have you here. This is fun because finally we get to see each other for the first time this season, and then it's like we barely see each other again until the middle of summer.
Right, exactly. I love this for us. I see you 3 times a year, but all 3 times it's great. So why not?
This is great. No, I think two teams in very different trajectories, right? You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. The Brewers are still trying to get out of neutral right now, it feels like, but as we record this before their finale with the Giants, they're really begging for a split against the tough team in San Francisco, but they're still a team that people want to continue to not really pay attention to, and that's a-okay. It's exactly how they like it.
Yeah, I feel like every year the Brewers come in and they're just kind of thought as the underdog, despite having won the division 4 or 3 times in the last 4 years. And I don't know if that is just part of being in the NL Central, part of not being a big market team, part of not really spending. But every year they seem to sort of get it going, which is why I was a little surprised to check the standings and see them hovering right around 500. But as you and I were talking about before the cameras went on, the Brewers have been in the midst of a grueling stretch to start April.
This is the second West Coast trip they're just finishing. This is their only three-city road trip of the year, though, which is good news for any team in the NL Central, given how great the travel is in this division. But when you think of two trips west, on top of opening the season in New York and then coming right back home, I mean, they've had a lot of day games and a lot of travel already to this point of the year. They're getting a lot of it done now. The good news for the Brewers is that after they're done with the Giants now, they don't go west again until after the All-Star break. So they get to kind of get comfortable in the Central and Eastern time zones. And that may not sound like a thing to some people, but when you're traveling and you're putting your body on the line and that big jump, that 2.5 hour jump or whatever, I give my kudos to these guys and what they're going through. At the same time, it's only April. There's no reason to overreact. You want to make sure these bodies are fresh by the end of the year as opposed to the end of April. That's what the Brewers have kind of been doing with their lineup the last few games.
Got it. No, I saw a couple of show and goes from your manager,
Mm-hmm.
Pat Murphy. So that, and it helped, right? They burst out for 11 runs, I believe, a Christian Yelich grand slam. So good to see the Brewers maybe kind of sputtering out of this. The Cardinals are in their own little rut. It's not nearly, it's much worse than where the Brewers are right now. But each time that these two teams play, I think it brings out for some really compelling, competitive baseball. When you're watching the Milwaukee Brewers, as we are almost 1 month into the regular season, which seems crazy, what part of their game sticks out to you that you think is a legitimate threat?
For the Brewers, the biggest threat is their bat to ball. They don't necessarily hit for power per se, but you look at some of these wins for the Brewers, and you're consistently seeing 5, 6 strikeouts and then 4 or 5 walks. Like their awareness of the strike zone is one of their biggest strengths because that's how they've been building this team of guys that can get on base, that are supposed to play great defense, and then be able to steal a bag and be able to create havoc on the base paths. They know home runs are expensive, and that's the truth of baseball. Home runs are expensive and strikeouts are expensive. So the Brewers operate in this market of, hey, let's get guys to put the bat on ball, like Bryce Terang having another great start to his season, like Sal Frelick, who's hitting over 300 still at this point in the season, to be able to get on base for those guys that are supposed to be supplying the power, right? Like Yelich, who's got 5 homers now, like Contreras, like Hoskins, who's starting to get going right now. And I know a lot of folks talk about the departure of Willy Adames, and rightly so. 30 home runs, 120 plus RBIs. How do you replace that? The Brewers are not going money ball and, we're going to replace him in the aggregate or that sort of thing. The way they're looking at it is, well, let's just go even deeper into the way that we were successful in 2024, and that is getting on base, stealing bases, and putting runners in scoring position. Because if you continue to do that, speed never has a bad day. Putting the bat on ball in a second and third and 1 out situation, that's still a run as opposed to waiting on another 3-run homer from Willy Adames.
That's a great point. And I think watching the Brewers last year, a bunch of us had the same realization, including from the Cardinals themselves. The Brewers were such an athletic team for the things that you just mentioned. They played a smart brand of baseball. They were fast. They took advantage of mistakes. And that kind of game that they play, the Cardinals have one player who does this very well, Victor Scott II. He changes the game with his speed and his, like you said, speed never takes a day off, and his ability to know when to use it. The Brewers, I think, have that ability in a majority of their lineup, and that can really help creating the offensive production, like you mentioned.
And then for Victor's case too, I think of him as a guy that also plays solid defense. I think of Mason Wynn now that he's back from his back issues. You have capable players of doing this. The difference is the Brewers literally have drafted for this for years, and they have drafted athletes, and they have drafted speed, and they have drafted to add pieces, and they're getting Blake Perkins back on the way. That's another guy that has speed, that can play great defense, that puts bat on ball, and he's been out throughout all of spring training. But I think the point of it is in the difference, and forgive me for already using the cliche, but the Cardinal way has kind of shifted over here to Milwaukee, right? I think of those classic teams of the Cardinals days. I know Cardinals fans know what I'm talking about, of course, in the 80s, and we talk about 82, we talk about all those teams. But then even in the 2000s, there were so many teams that I think of Eckstein, right? I think of the great defensive role, and I think of just doing the little things right. And that leads to, man, here they are again. And that's what the Brewers have been able to do so far.
Yeah, and I think Cardinals fans, maybe that's why we resonate so well with so much with how the Brewers play, because they're like, hey, I remember that brand of baseball. I remember when that was a thing in St. Louis. So a surprising thing for the Cardinals this year is that their rotation has actually been pretty decent. It's everything else that has struggled, but we'll get there. I'm looking at the probables for the Cardinals and Brewers just got sent to me. And I have to say it, the first two names for the Brewers are not exactly names that I would go out there and say, yeah, I recognize. On Friday, we're going to see Matthew Liberatore. He's done a really nice job. I think he's thrown three or four quality starts so far this year. Versus right-hander Chad Patrick. So you're going to have to fill me in on that one. And then Saturday, we'll get Sonny Gray. He's 3-0, off to a really good start this year as well against Quinn Priester. And then the series finale on Sunday, you'll see Eric Fetty versus old friend Jose Quintana, 3-0 with an 0.96 ERA, shoving. What do you think about the Brewers rotation right now?
Brewers rotation is getting better. And as we record this on Thursday, Tobias Myers just returned to the rotation. He was last year's diamond in the rough that nobody saw coming, had a 3 ERA, 27 games a season ago, 140 innings, great in the playoffs. The rotation is getting healthy. I think the overreaction from the first week of the season when the Brewers get whacked out of New York and lose the home opener to the Royals in grand fashion, right? You look at all these blowouts. I mean, Nestor's hurt, and we don't know how much he's going to pitch the rest of the year. He's got a flexor strain, the same injury that plagued him at the end of last regular season. He's about to be a free agent. You can put the cards together on that one. Then you look at not having Tobias Myers at the start of the season. He just returned. He had an oblique strain. You don't have Aaron Ashby. You don't have DL Hall. You don't have Aaron Savali all of a sudden. You look at the top 8 of the Brewers starting rotation coming out of spring training, and quite frankly, 5 of them are hurt. And it's not something most teams can absorb, but kudos to the Brewers to be able to go get Jose Quintana during spring training. I tweeted it a second ago, or like the other night, when he was shoving once again. 29 other teams didn't want Jose Quintana. Right. And it took until the first week of spring training for somebody to sign him. And now here he is 3 starts in with a sub-1 ERA. It's like, should we send them thank you cards? Like, how did nobody want this guy? He is the exact professional that you expect. Cardinals fans know it as well. But furthermore, Chad Patrick, believing in the player development pipeline the Brewers have with their pitching development. He's the latest case of it. Chad has been traded twice. He was originally drafted by the Diamondbacks, small town out of Indiana, and then got traded for Jace Peterson to the Oakland A's at the time, and then traded for Abraham Toro from the Brewers to the A's to come back over to Milwaukee. And that's looking like the steal of the century to get a guy who's currently in AAA with the Red Sox for a guy who's probably going to be in your rotation for the next few years to come. Cutter, sinker, four-seamer, a rare changeup too. Here's my fastball. You try to hit it. It's an uncomfortable 0 for 3 where it's like, oh, I saw that. Then you look up and you're 0 for 3 and he didn't hit a ball hard. That's what Chad Patrick does so well. And for Quinn Priester, Brewers had to make a trade because of all those injuries I talked about. Right. They had to go make a trade with the Red Sox, who acquired him from the Pirates last year, former first-rounder. You can say post-type sleeper, that sort of thing. Another example of the Brewers trusting their pitching development, saying, hey, here's an optionable starting pitcher. Let's bring him into what we do. Let's develop certain things, make him right. And you blink, and here he is with the sub-2 ERAs. Well, he's had some command issues as of late, but the Brewers have something working in their pitching, and they're going to keep leaning on it.
And this is so important, I think, from Cardinals fans to hear, because For years, St. Louis has not had adequate starting pitching depth. They have quite literally run out where they've had 7 starters, and that includes what was available in AAA. Last season, there was a time where they were running out with 4 major league starters and just hoping that they could do a bullpen game or a spot start for almost an entire month because they don't have the pitching depth in their minor league system. That's a whole other separate tangent. Cardinals fans know it's part of their whole organization overhaul. But good teams like the Brewers, like the Mets, like the Dodgers, I know it's completely different pay scales, but in terms of play on the field and organizational depth, that's what they have. And the Brewers are able to stay consistent and stay relevant because they have such deep starting pitching. The Cardinals, if they lose 1 to 2 starters, they have virtually nobody that they can call up, which is why that they are using this kind of 6-man rotation. Steven Matz pitched in long relief on Tuesday against the Braves, so he will not be in this rotation through the Brewers at least, but he will pitch again in Cincinnati. It's because the Cardinals are trying to prolong their starting pitching health, so they're really maximizing the 6 days rest. So that's why Cardinals are doing it. You're seeing a true hand example on what teams that actually have the depth in their minor league system can get away with. Yeah, I think St. Louis would be very happy to have a Quinn Priester or a Chad Patrick waiting in the wings.
And furthermore, the Brewers had to send down Logan Henderson, who struck out 9 in his big league debut on Sunday. They still have Jacob Mizorowski on the way. They still have pitchers like Casey Hunt, like Carlos Rodriguez, who are even further on the depth chart. That you're like, yeah, that guy's probably going to be a big leaguer here pretty soon. Rodriguez made his big league debut last year. And they've got Robert Gasser, who's recovering from Tommy John surgery. This is what the Brewers do. They focus on homegrown pitching. It's how you had that 3-headed monster in 2021 of Corbin Burns winning the Cy Young, Brandon Woodruff finishing 5th, and Freddie Peralta wouldn't have finished in the top 10 if he was a qualified arm. He had missed some starts at the end. That's all homegrown. 100% of that was homegrown. This isn't by accident. This is what David Stearns laid the foundation for. Now, obviously, he's with the Mets. Matt Arnold has picked up exactly where he left off and continues to invest on the player development side. I think people understand, yes, the Brewers don't spend money on free agents. They don't spend money in trades. They don't do that sort of thing. But I will give Brewers all the credit in the world for how much they've invested behind the scenes and how much money that costs. They've got a brand new facility down in Santo Domingo. They invest in their minor leagues. They invest in their minor league facilities. They invest in what they're able to do with their pitching development, with their analysts and that sort of thing. That stuff costs money too. And the Brewers have said, you know what? Let's make sure that we can continue to churn this factory, more important than going to spend $30 million on one guy who may or may not perform. That's how the Brewers are operating, and because they understand the investment it takes for pitching.
And I think that blueprint is exactly what the St. Louis Cardinals want to get to. It's going to take some time. This is not something that they fix overnight. You can certainly speak to that. It's a long, lengthy process. And should they have started this years ago? Probably. They did not. They're starting it now. It's one of Chaim Bloom's big projects. He's just alongside with David Stearns in terms of being one of those top leading names in modernization of the game and player development. So Cardinals fans, if you're looking for a blueprint on what this could look like in 4 to 5 years, the Brewers right now, pretty good example. We'll get right into the division. I know that there's a lot to talk about in our very mighty NL Central, Dom, but first let's hear a message from Arena Club.
Todd Father, I want to pull a very expensive card out of a pack. Very difficult to do and very expensive. I can't pay for it, okay? How could I acquire that card?
Simple. Instead of driving somewhere, you go on Arena Club, go get you a slab pack, and you'll have some of the best cards you're ever going to see. Some one-of-ones, some cards that you want to have and you can't get out of your home. Go right online, check out Arena Club.
Yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. And every time you rip a slab pack, Arena Club will make you an instant offer for your card based on its market value. That's right. No guessing, no waiting. Instant offer for the estimated fair market value. You can accept it on the spot. You can use that cash for another slab pack, or you can buy, sell, trade. This platform has it all for the collectors out there. And right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
All right, so we're looking at the standings. Again, we're recording this on Thursday, April 24th, ahead of the Brewers series finale against the Giants in San Francisco. But looking at the standings right now, Brewers right around 500, 1 game over. Could be 500, could be. Cardinals holding it down with the Pirates in last, 10 and 15, similar records there, very same records there, similar to the Reds, who are 12-13. And then we have the Chicago Cubs, 6 games over 500. I'm a little surprised. I thought the Cubs were good. I thought the gap between Chicago and the Brewers would be a little closer right now, but Chicago looks like a legitimate team. John, what are you thinking about the division?
The Cubs are legit. I think the Cubs are a great ball club. I want to make that very clear. Even though I still pick the Brewers to win the division, maybe that's some hometown bias, that sort of thing. But here's why the Cubs are legit. Now, Justin Steele going down is going to be a massive impact to them. Do they go get somebody on the trade market? Are they the ones to splash the pot and go in and get Sandy Alcantara or something like that? But the Cubs can hit, and holy cow, this is a different offense than we've seen from them in years past. Last year, just never felt like they got going. Dansby Swanson had a tough year. Cody Bellinger obviously is no longer. He had some injuries here as well. Seiya Suzuki never really got going for them either. He was the only guy that really had positive offense. And Ian Happ has been just a steady force. But now you throw in Kyle Tucker. I've been a big fan of what Miguel Amaya and Carson Kelly have been doing. Like, holy cow, out of their catching core. And then on top of all of that, too, you've got Nico Horner healthy again. You've got Pete Crow Armstrong playing like a future all-star that he's going to be. They're a dangerous club, but their number one Achilles heel is their bullpen. And you can hit and you can hit and you can hit. But if you're playing 10-9 games all season long, that bullpen is going to be out of gas by June. So that's something I'm monitoring with the Cubs as something the Brewers can slide and say, well, does good pitching beat good hitting? This is the age-old forever question we're always going to see in this game, because the Brewers, they struggle offensively. That's no doubt. That's the biggest calling card about the Brewers' flaws. But these two teams will meet next weekend for the first time here in Milwaukee. And I think both teams are going to find out a lot about themselves, because now the Cubs are done with that West Coast. They're done with the Diamondbacks. They're done with the Padres. They're done with the Dodgers. But now they're going to finally start facing their own division. And seeing the Brewers for both of these teams, you're like, okay, how good are we really?
Definitely. And this upcoming series between the Cardinals and the Brewers is both teams just their second time matching up against division opponents. So the Cardinals don't really know what the NL Central is either. I will say it's interesting. You want to talk about an Achilles heel being the bullpen. Well, St. Louis certainly knows that. We broke down all of the bullpen issues, decisions, controversy on Thursday with the episode with Bernie Miklasz. Go check it out, Cardinal Territory fans. But this bullpen will make or break you. The Cardinals have had this problem pretty much all year long, and bullpens are so volatile, and relief pitchers are so finicky, and not just between the season, but honestly between weeks. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. But for a Cardinals bullpen that was so locked down in the majors last year, for them to come up and outside of Ryan Helsley, Phil Maton, who they signed with 3 weeks left in spring training, and Kyle Leahy, those are 3 guys you trust out of 8 possible spots. So Cubs, if that is the issue that you are having, then I'd be side with you, Dominic. I just feel like it's far too early to tell. And I agree. Well, when we look at the Cubs and the Brewers and that matchup, we'll have a little bit better idea of how the teams stack up against each other. But I still think this division is pretty wide open.
I think it is wide open. I do think it is mainly between those two, the Brewers and the Cubs. The Reds, I always want to believe in them, but they always disappoint me.
Same every year.
You should be so much better than this. And I think the Reds are going to learn this year. I texted this to a friend of mine who's a big Reds fan. I said, the Reds are going to learn this year what the Cubs learned last year. Just changing managers doesn't change the roster. And they're going to get under Tito's tutelage. He's going to be great for that role, just like I believe Craig Counsell is going to be just fine in Chicago. But at the same time, I don't think anybody expected the Cubs to be flirting with 500 in year 1 of Craig Counsell. But then you look at the roster and it's like, okay, yeah, that does make sense, actually. So for this division, God, can we get Paul Skeens some help down in Pittsburgh? Gosh, St. Louis, can you do this rebuild right? Like, there's just so many headlines that aren't, is this team good? Which is kind of what brings everybody down about the NL Central, right? Like, how often do we have to defend the NL Central? No, the Cubs and Brewers are good teams. Just trust us. And then they don't get out of the first round. So it's like,
exactly.
They're good, but we can't defend it forever.
NL Central, you're not helping your cause here with all these early playoff exits, and they usually get one team in there anyway. So I'm excited to see how this division looks in June or so. I don't expect the Cardinals to. I actually have no idea what I expect for the Cardinals anymore. It's riding this roller coaster for this transition season. we finished against, had a homestand against the Phillies and the Astros. And I was leaving. I was talking to a couple of friends and I was like, maybe this team is a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. And then they go 1-6 on the road and it just, everything goes off the rails. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything. So
well, you faced a hot team in the Mets, best record in baseball. Okay. And then the Braves, you knew they weren't going to stay 0-7 all year long. They're finally getting going and they're finally feeling like themselves. And they had the spice of the Jared Kelenic stuff and they're starting to come together. It's odd how stuff like that can kind of bring a team closer and get them going better. When I look at the Cardinals, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's just like these kids, I mean, having Mason back is going to be huge, but it's like the kids can prove, these third, fourth year guys, like, okay, this is going to be my team here pretty soon. I better start performing. And they're finding out how hard that is to do when you're suddenly the guy on the scouting report that's like, okay, circle that guy, figure out how to get him out. And it just hasn't got going for them yet.
Yes, that's pretty much what it is. This is the whole point of their transition season, right? Is to run these guys out every single day, regardless of like individual results, and hope they figure it out. Because when John Mozeliak steps down and Heimblum takes over, he's going to want to know which pieces to build around. So in prior years, if someone like a Jordan Walker or a Nolan Gorman struggled, they would be optioned or they would have their playing time cut, which is what you do when you're trying to win ball games. The Cardinals are trying to see how they can win ball games in the future, not necessarily right now. So they're going to run guys out there like Jordan Walker, who is slumping heavily over the last 2 weeks. They're going to keep running out Nolan Gorman. In fact, Ollie Marmol went out over the Atlanta Braves series and said, we are going to give Gorman a little bit of a run here because we need to see what he has if he's improved his contact rate. They're going to continue running out guys, relievers like Jojo Romero and Ryan Fernandez, because it's about finding ways to adapt in the big leagues. Does it make for some maddening, frustrating baseball games? Absolutely. But this was the whole premise of the Cardinals coming into the 2025 season. See what we have so we know what we can build with in the future. Far too early to tell on April 24th what future pieces look like. But I will say it's not been the best month. April has not been the best month to start the season.
You're dealing with a bunch of guys who were performing like Jackson Chourio in the first half of last season. And the Brewers said, hey, there's nothing for him to learn in AAA. He's either going to sink or swim here in the big leagues. And he obviously eventually started to swim. And that's what Cardinals fans, I think, are hoping right now, to say the least.
Yeah. And, the fact is not every single player is going to rise and prosper here. That's just the unfortunate reality. And if they do, then all of a sudden this rebuild or transition or whatever we're calling it is looking a lot less short. But I think it's so hard in St. Louis because this is the first time that they've done anything like this. And Cardinals fans have been conditioned to expect a certain quality of baseball for decades. And that quality of baseball right now was not up to their standard. And you tie that into a front office and an ownership that did not spend. They spent $2 million over the entire offseason on the Maton deal. They tried to trade many of their players. They did not bring back key players like Paul Goldschmidt, Andrew Kittredge. And you're seeing that. I mean, I'll be shocked to see what this series looks like. A weekend series against the Brewers in April with the weather supposed to be relatively okay. It's been a pretty empty ballpark. And I think that fan apathy is really setting in, especially after this last road trip.
Yeah, and the Blues are in the playoffs too, right? So that's not going to help things either. So it's just things that we're monitoring. Go Stars, by the way. I'm a big Stars guy. They won in overtime again last night. So
you got to give the podcast an LGB. I say this like I know anything about hockey, but yeah, let's go. All right,
they're fun.
We'll get back to the division real quick. First, a message from FanDuel Sports Network. That banger has been stuck in my head for like 2 days. So
we have it here too, obviously.
Oh,
I'm employed by FanDuel Sports Network in part, so I can't say anything.
I don't know. I think baseball has just completely warped my mind, as you know all too well at this point of the season. It just is what it is.
We're already at this point in April, Katie. I'm worried for your well-being then.
We should be worried about my well-being for a lot of things. All right. Big 3-game series, as big as you can get in April. We're looking for our FanDuel Sports Network player to watch. Who are you watching from this Brewers squad coming up?
It's got to be Bryce Terang. He has been awesome so far this season. Even though the Cardinals are starting a lefty on Friday in Liberatore, he's probably going to be in the top of the lineup. And I think of when Bryce Terang first came up in the big leagues, he was not allowed to see a lefty at all. Then last year, started to get a little bit more against lefties. Now this year, he's taken another leap forward. We call it the quantum leap last year. He continues to improve. He calls it man strength. He's 25 years old now. He's a man now, right? But he has been awesome this season. A true traditional leadoff man, 50 stolen bases a year ago. I believe he's at 7 right now, well on his way to try to do it again.
So you're telling me that an organization can have a second baseman and not platoon him, and then all of a sudden, and
it took some teeth pulling. It took a lot of teeth pulling, but they eventually relented, and look at what they've got now.
Yeah, see, Cardinals fans, there is hope. I think the player I'm going to watch from this series from the Brewers is Quintana. I mean, just a full disclosure, I really liked him when he was a Cardinal for 2 months, and I think they really wanted to bring him back. Well, I think some did, not the front office, and it baffles me how Quintana continuously posts year after year, is not just a quality starter, but he's not a 1 or a 2, obviously, but he's one of those sneaky guys that you put into the upper part of your rotation, and he's a difference maker. And every year no one picks him up. I don't get it.
It's the nerdification of our sport, right? And I'm a nerd. Like I'll put my hand up on that too. But it's like, oh, we want a guy that throws 95, and we want to call up our kid that doesn't know where it's going that throws 98. Well, it's like, but here's a guy that can give you 140 innings, no problem, drop of a hat, has been doing it for 13 years. Why don't you want this guy? It's like, we want our own guy, controllable. I'm like, I'm so glad the Brewers are the ones that finally did this. And it took a lot of convincing from Pat Murphy, from Matt Arnold. I mean, Pat Murphy was the one championing Jose Quintana. Like, I've seen this guy shove against us for years and years and years. Bring him on our side and see what happens. That's a great pick, Katie.
Hey, Pat Murphy, big ASU guy.
Big Devils here.
Big Devils on podcast for us. All right, quickly. You can now stream the St. Louis Cardinals baseball games through FanDuel Sports Network. And if you use the promo code baseball30, you can start it off with a 30-day extended free trial at FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. This deal expires May 2nd, $19.99 a month after your free trial. Cancel during your free trial to avoid charges. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit FanDuelSportsNetwork.com for details. My friend, I wish we were in Milwaukee so I could see you. But that will happen in June. Milwaukee, I think my second favorite road city.
What's number 1? New York, San Francisco.
Okay, so Milwaukee's my third favorite city.
Yeah, see, I had a feeling.
Yeah, San Francisco doesn't feel like a road city because I get to go home. But Chicago and San Diego are up there too. Milwaukee, though, sneaky fun. I love that public market. It's
so we're literally right over here. I'm gonna go stop by and grab some lunch here in a little bit there. Milwaukee, sneaky great city. I know St. Louis fans hate to hear it, and I'll actually be in St. Louis at the end of the year in September for that final home road weekend that the Brewers have at the end of September. So hopefully, I think September is the right time to see St. Louis. Yeah, right. I don't really know if there's a good time to visit weather-wise. Well, yeah, it's a coin flip, but we got a roof on it, so we don't got to worry about that here. Yeah, it must be nice. I've seen the tarp way more than I really wanted to. Dom, my friend, thank you so much for doing this. Where can we find your work? Where can we follow you? Thanks, Katie. So I'm on X, Twitter, the everything app, whatever we're calling it, at Dom_Cotroneo. Same spelling as the name right here. I'm on Instagram sparingly, Dom Brewers it's Dom C Baseball on Instagram. That's mostly Brewers centered content, but I'm on pre and post game almost every Brewers game this year here on 620 WTMJ here locally in Milwaukee, all the podcasts, all that stuff. There are not many Dominic Cotroneos in the world, and quite frankly, Google me and it usually works out. Perfect. Love that for you. Thank you so much again for doing this. We will talk soon. Cardinal Territory. We're going to be back with you after the Brewers series. Thanks as always for watching.